We're just past 5:30, so I think we're pretty good to get started here. We are recording this Lakeside Chat. We have with us tonight Matt Sperazzo. He's an external business consultant with John Hancock Investments. He's been with them for 13 years, and he works with John Hancock on the investments, defined contribution plans, 529 savings plans. And he is also NSSA designated through the National Social Security Advisors Association. So he's going to talk with us tonight about Social Security, some tips, tricks, some information. There's lots to go over there. So I'll hand everything off to Matt now. Thanks for joining us.
Great. Well, thank you, Adam. Thank you, Christine. I appreciate everyone taking the time tonight. And yeah, we're going to talk we're going to keep this presentation about 30 minutes. But a topic that's always on everyone's mind, and now that the presidential election cycle is coming up, we're going to hear a lot more about this topic. So during this presentation, if you have questions, Adam, Christina, can people unmute themselves and mute themselves at their own discretion?
Yeah, that's not
okay. So I'm going to pull up my presentation. I'm going to stop my video so I can focus on the presentation here. But please, during the presentation, if you have questions, ask me. If you want me to clarify something, that's why we're here tonight. And again, if something doesn't make sense and you want to talk offline, please reach out to Adam or Christine or Heidi, and we can definitely set some time up offline to maybe go through your personal situation. Because the one thing I'll point out, there is no right answer on when everyone should take Social Security. I've been to a ton of these presentations, and I always hear, oh, the right age is wait until 70, or the right age is take it right at 62 and let's invest the money. It really depends on each individual situation. So that's why I'm going to kind of just give a 30,000-foot overview tonight. There's so many working pieces to Social Security, so I'm going to try to hit upon, I would say, the most popular questions I've gotten over my 13-year career here at John Hancock. And as Adam mentioned, I am registered through the National Social Security Association. So I do have to do some additional training every single year on this topic to stay on top of it. Because as I mentioned, it's always changing. And we're going to find the changes out for 2021 just in about 6 weeks here. I think we get the updates the second or third week of October. So I'll definitely reach out to Heidi, Christine, and Adam with those changes to relay those off to you guys. So tonight, let me kind of go through the agenda here. What we're going to discuss is the roots of Social Security, where it stands today. Since this system has been put into place, we've lived through 14 recessions, and I feel like every single recession, people say, oh, Social Security will no longer be there 5, 10 years from now. And it's funny, a lot of people that are just starting to collect are the same people that said, I were the ones that said this wouldn't be here in 15, 20 years. And here I am finally making my decision, and it's still here. So I do want to talk about that. And then finally, how to maximize Social Security. When's the earliest I can take it? When's the latest I can take it? What happens if I'm divorced or if I lose a spouse? What are all the different options? So let's start. And again, if you have questions, please stop me or just unmute your line and ask the questions and we can go through. I will try to give some real life examples to try to make this confusing topic a little bit less confusing. So just a brief look at this history of the program. The far right, 1940, that's when they started making those regular monthly contributions to clients. This is my favorite slide in the entire presentation. If there's one slide to focus on, this is it. And actually, I know Clute Wealth Management, you guys actually have an office in Vermont. The first person to ever get a Social Security check actually came out of Ludlow, Vermont. And the reason why I love this story, no one ever beats the government, right? The government always collects their taxes. Even after we pass away, we might have estate taxes. Here was one person who beat the government system, and she did it pretty well. Ida Mae Fuller from Ludlow, Vermont. She signed up for her benefits, first person in the country at the age of 65. She only put in about $23 into the Social Security system because she only worked and paid in the system for 2 years. She collects at the age of 65. Gets this, she lives to 100 years old. Now, back in 1940, when they were figuring out those actuarial tables, they never expected anyone to live to 100. Never mind the first person to ever get a check collects for 35 consecutive years. Again, out of her payroll taxes, about $23 went into Social Security, she took out $23,000 over her lifetime. And that's a common theme today. We all have probably friends, family, neighbors that are living well into their 80s, 90s, even 100. I share the story about my wife. Her grandfather lived to 96. Grandmother's still alive today at the age of 95. I joke with my wife, but I tell her, after I die, you're going to have an entire life after I pass away. So for our retirement planning, I'm not just thinking about my life, I'm thinking about my wife's as well. So that's why this decision when you're married becomes a little bit more confusing and a little bit more important because of the death benefit. All right, so just a few stats on Social Security. And actually this year, we got to update this. 65 million people will receive some sort of Social Security benefit this year. And if you look at the bottom, this is a scary part. More people are applying for benefits every day. There's less people working at the offices. They're receiving almost 500,000 calls on a daily basis, 180,000 visits before the offices shut down. Average national wait time, and this is directly from Social Security, is about 3 hours if you just call randomly in the middle of the day. So the best thing, if you're on this call, you have not signed up for benefits yet, and you want to talk to somebody, set an appointment. You're going to get a 30-minute time block to ask whatever questions you want. The problem is, though, you have to be prepared to ask questions. You have to know what to ask them. And that's where Christina and Adam and Heidi will come into play, give you guys a list or a conversation at least. Okay, what should I be thinking about? What type of questions should I be asking? Because Social Security does not just put out all the different options. They don't go through your personal situation. They'll answer any questions you ask, but you have to know what questions to ask. If you know exactly what you want to do, if you're on this Zoom call right now and you say, hey, I want to sign up right at 62. I've done the math. That's what I want to do. You can actually start that application up to 90 days before. So you know exactly what you want to do. You want to apply as of October. Start that application right now. If something's not in good order, Social Security will reach out to you and ask you the questions to make sure that paperwork is in good order. Now, I just want to pause here and show you guys the website. Adam, Heidi, Adam and Christina, can you just give me a thumbs up if the website pulls up? All right. So this is SSA.gov. Very important website. Just go to your computer, type in SSA.gov. On the main page, this is where you would actually sign in. At the top right, if you have a username, that's where you sign in. If you haven't created one yet, that's where you sign up. But one calculator that I think a lot of people overlook is this retirement estimator calculator. A lot of people say, hey, where can I find a calculator to do some estimates for my actual situation? Not just random numbers, not percentages. I want to see my actual information. So let me just click on this to show you how it works. And again, if you just come to SSA.gov and in the search engine, just type in the word estimator, this calculator will pop up. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but as you'll see, they're going to ask your name, Social Security, mother's maiden name, date of birth, because they want to pull your actual information. And I had a client who said, hey, I'm going to retire at 59. What are my actual numbers going to look like? This is where you would go in. You would put your income from now until 59, and then after the age of 59, if you plan to stop working, you're allowed to put in zeros, and it will calculate your actual benefit. So if you have not played around with this calculator website, please do. A lot of great information. All right, so back to the presentation. All right, so where it stands today, I already mentioned it earlier. It is in financial trouble. However, we've had problems before with Social Security and it has been fixed. So let's just discuss why there are issues with Social Security today. The first one, like Ida Mae Fuller, people are living longer. I would say when this system started, they estimated that only about 50% of the population would actually live to get a benefit. Because when they started it, you couldn't get a benefit until 65. As you'll see here, average American was only living to 63. So think about that. Most Americans weren't actually living long enough to get this benefit. Today, you might get this benefit for the next 25, 30 years. Number two, and I want to talk more about this in a few minutes, it only used to be for retired workers. So Ida Mae Fuller from Vermont, she paid into it. Even though it was only 2 years, she was eligible. Today, and we'll talk more about these, spouses, survivors, disability, divorce survivors, children. I'm doing this presentation from my house. Downstairs, I have a 4-year-old and a 4-month-old. God forbid something happened to me, both of my children would be eligible for Social Security benefit immediately. So as you'll see, there's more people taking from that pot, less people paying in. Now, you keep hearing it's going broke. Will it be there in 3 or 4 or 5, 15 years? Number one, just to put that myth aside, it can't go broke. As long as the system's in place, they're always gonna be collecting those FICA taxes out of our checks. So there's always gonna be money coming in, but when people say it's going broke, what they're talking about is there's gonna be a gap. There's not gonna be enough money coming in from our taxes to pay out all the baby boomers over the next 25, 30 years, whatever it is. So that's the problem that we have to face, is if they don't make any changes by 2035, that's the key year, then there's gonna be a 21% gap from money coming in to money going out. So the question is, how can they fix this? And they had the same problem before. In 1983, they didn't have 15 years to fix the problem. They only had about 5 months. And what they did in 1983 is they started raising the full retirement age. So they went from 65 to 66. But then they also started taxing it on the way out. And this is back in Ronald Reagan era. They decided that they need more money immediately. So what did they do? If your income was high enough when you started collecting, you actually got taxed again on the way out. So you're taxed on the way in and taxed on the way out. So that's how they fixed the system back then. What can they do today? First one, raise full retirement age. For me, I'm born 1960 or later. I'm already pushed out to a full retirement age of 67. And if people are living longer and working longer, I will definitely see that be pushed out to as high as maybe 70. I'd say the fourth one at the top here, for some reason, this surprised a lot of people, and I can see a change coming at some point for this one, if I had to guess, increase the payroll tax cap. So this year in our country, if you have an income of $137,700, after that amount, you're no longer paying into Social Security. So if I'm making $600,000 a year, after $137,700, they're no longer taking that FICA Social Security check out of mine. And I actually saw, it was Chris Christie's campaign. Now this was 5 years ago, but they estimated at the time, if you increase that number to 250, it could last for another 17 years without making any other changes. Just that one change, by taxing the higher income earners a little bit more, it could last for another 17 years. So I do believe you'll see some changes around that. But this is a list of different things they could do. For example, 6.2%. If you're self-employed though, 12.4% is actually coming out of your check. I've seen some proposals on increasing that. So it might be a combination of these things. It could be something off this list. My point is that there's a lot of different things they could do to fix the system, but they don't have to make the changes today. And without getting politics involved here, I would say if they have 15 years to make the changes, they're probably not going to do it this year. All right, so once you start collecting, every single year, your check could slightly go up. It's called a COLA, a cost of living adjustment. And what Social Security does is they look at this index and they compare it to the third quarter of this year to the third quarter of last year. If they estimate that inflation is present, your check could go up. So for example, over the last 30 years, the checks have gone up at about 3% per year, 2.7. However, it hasn't stayed up with your common household expenses. And the one I always like to point out here is healthcare. That's probably going to be your biggest expense later in life. During that 30-year period, healthcare grew at 10%, Social Security at 2.7. So if you get a small bonus each year, great, but I wouldn't make that as part of your plan. I wouldn't say, okay, let's take it early because I know it's going to step up each year. Just over the last 10 years, they've actually had 3 years where no one got a raise. So it's never guaranteed. Check can't go down, but it could slightly go up. All right. Now what I want to talk about is eligibility. We got about another 15 or 20 minutes. So we're going to talk about eligibility and then all the different benefits available. But in order to get your own Social Security check, you must have paid in the system for 10 years. Technically, you need 40 credits. You can get 4 credits per year. But the easy way to look at this is as long as you paid in the system for 10 years, you will have some sort of benefit when you retire. But the question is, how many years of your work history do they look at? to calculate this benefit. I would say this is probably the biggest misconception of Social Security is how many years of your work history do they actually look at. And usually when I do this in person, the most common answer I get is the final 3 years of your work. And why do most people guess that? That's how pensions are usually built. They look at your final 3 years of service, they take an average of that, and then give you a percentage of that. And I use my father as an example. He worked for the state of Massachusetts. Now, my dad was a pretty hard worker his whole life, but his final 3 years, he was working overtime, he was getting up early. I never seen the guy work so hard in my life. What he was trying to do was juice up that overtime, get that average up, and he got 85% of those final 3 years for the rest of his life. That's how his pension was built. Social Security doesn't do that. If you look at the third point, they actually look at your highest 35 years. So it's not your last 3 years, not your last 5 years. It's not even consecutive 35 years. It's just your highest 35 years. So if you look at the top there, if you qualify and you paid in for 10 years, they need to use 35 years. So the question is, what about if you're like my mother? You stayed at home and raised a family. Maybe you only have 25 years. They're going to actually implement zeros for those remaining 10 years. So everyone needs to get to 35 years. If you only have 10 years, they're going to put 25 years of zeros. But what happens if you have 40 years? They're going to look at all 40 years, but what they're going to extract out is those high 35 years, and that's what they're going to use to start this whole calculation. So that's why I'd look at your statement and say, okay, how many years have I paid in this system? And how many of them have been significant years? For example, when I was 18, I qualified, but it was part-time work. It was a very low year. But right now, that's one of my best 35 years. All right, so this slide's very important because what it's going to show you is your individual full retirement age. So as I mentioned, it used to be 65, then they moved it up to 66. If you were born 1958, full retirement age is 66 and 8 months. And what I mean by full retirement age, two things that means. Number one, you get your full benefit. There's no discount. If you take it early, it's going to be discounted. I'll talk about that in a minute. But number two, very important, this is where I also see a lot of mistakes. If you decide to continue to work and collect Social Security, there's a certain amount of income you can make before a penalty turns on. I'm going to talk about that because it's very important. I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. But once you hit your full retirement age, that worker penalty simply goes away. My grandfather went back to work at the age of 67, didn't have to worry about the penalty because he was above his full retirement age. So just know if you're going to take it at 62 and have a decent income, it's going to negatively affect you. And I'll share some examples, but I would say that is probably where I see the most mistakes. Clients that collect early, have high income, and all of a sudden they get a letter the next year from Social Security saying that they either owe money or they're not going to get a check until this date. So that's what full retirement age means. So if you do sign up on NSSA.gov, you'll be allowed to get your statement whenever you want. I could log on every single night and look at my statement. It's not going to change. It only changes once a year, but you can always access that statement. If you're on this call right now and you're below the age of 60, you're not getting statements anymore. No one in our country, unless you're age 60, is getting a paper statement anymore. So I'm 37 years old. I'm not getting a statement for another 23 years. However, I sign up online. I get emailed every single year when that new statement becomes available. This will show you every single year you paid in the system. It'll give you some rough estimates. These aren't guarantees. Rough estimates at what you would get at the age of 62, full retirement age, and the highest number is what you would get at the age of 70. The reason why I say these are estimates, if you're like me and you're still working full time, when I look at my estimates, they're basing it off of, they look at last year's income and project that I'm going to make that exact same income until I'm 62, full, or 70. So if you log on to my account right now, my numbers look pretty good, even though I only have 35 years. It's because they're estimating whatever my salary was last year will be the exact same salary for another 30 years. So that's why if you're only 55, 58, those numbers could slightly change over the next 5 years if you don't keep that income up. All right, so let's talk about when you can actually take your benefit. So I know everyone on my presentation always says, what's the earliest I can take it? That's age 62, unless you're disabled. And disability is a whole nother conversation. But if you have a disability and qualify for Social Security disability, you would be eligible for that a lot earlier. But let's just talk about retirement benefits. Earliest is age 62, latest is age 70, in every single month in between there. So I'm showing you 62, you get 75%. If you wait until 62 in 2 months, it might go up to 75.3%. And then once you get to full retirement age, any single year that you wait after full retirement age, it grows at 8% per year, guaranteed. So 62 to 70 in every single month in between there. I was working with a client last week, and CDs and rates are so low right now. Her question was, if I wait 1 year, she's 66, I would go from 100 to 108%. And I said, yeah, if you want to wait 12 months. And she goes, you're trying to tell me by just waiting 12 months, they're going to give me an 8% step up. And I said, that's exactly. And she goes, I don't want to wait until 70. And I said, no, you don't have to. You could just wait 6 months, 8 months, 12 months. So her thought was, with rates so low, guaranteed 8%, she wants to wait 1 more year to increase that check. All right, so let's talk about taking it early, but not the earliest possible. I showed you that big extreme example of taking it at 62 with a 25% reduction. But let's just say we take it 1 year early. You're still not going to get the 25% reduction. It's about a 6.7% reduction. So as you can see, each and every year it grows a little bit more, all the way up until age 70. It does stop growing at the age of 70, so no one should ever wait beyond the age of 70. All right, I do want to give you this quick example. It shows you taking a benefit early, full, and then late. And if you look, let's just call him John Doe. If he waits until full retirement age, he gets $24,000. In the first example, though, he only wants that 75%. He wants to collect early. Over that 23 years, dies at age 85, collects $414. Now, the middle example, he gets the full 24, no discount because he's full retirement age, gets that check for 19 years, it equals $456. Now, the final example, because of those 8% credits, he built the $24,000 to almost $32,000 annually. And what you'll see is, over a 15-year time frame, $475. So in this scenario, it made the most sense to wait all the way until age 70. But I mean, what's the one variable, a huge variable we don't know? Date of death, right? If everyone on this Zoom call told me exactly when you were going to die, this would be simple math. But that's why we have to do the math with the artwork, because we got to figure out, okay, what makes the most sense for your situation? We got to look at longevity, family health history. Are you married? Age difference, income difference. So there's a lot that actually goes into this process. All right, so again, there's calculators out there. And I know Christina and Adam have access to these calculators from other companies, from LPL specifically. So I would say reach out to them if you want to get a rough estimate for your numbers. But people say, okay, what's the break even? If I took it at age 62, what age would I had to live to where it would have made sense for me to wait to that full retirement age? So if you take it at 62 and die before 78 and a half, let's call it, I don't want to say you win because your prize here is you just passed away, it's death. But if you took it at 62 and died before 78 and a half, you made the right decision. If you end up living beyond 78 and a half, it would have made more sense to wait. Now, if you're going to wait all the way until age 70, and this is just off your own life, you got to be confident that you can live to 82. So if you want to wait until 70 to get all those extra credits and the most out of Social Security, you got to be fairly confident that you're going to live until at least the age of 82 for it to be the right decision. So again, these are just rough estimates. If you're looking in your 90s, now you're talking about some big dollar amounts here. All right, so with the last 10 minutes, let's talk about the different benefits that are still available. And the first one, and the ones I usually get the most questions on, is spousal benefits. So this is obviously for anyone that's married. So spouses receive own benefit or a portion of spouse's benefit, whichever is larger. So I'm married, as an example. Let's say my wife raised a family, didn't actually go back to work, so doesn't have her own Social Security benefit. With the spousal benefit, she could still get a check based off of my work history in this example. So let's say my check is $2,000. My wife doesn't qualify. With the spousal benefit, she could still get up to half of mine while I'm still alive. So mine's $2,000, she gets $1,000. Combined, we're getting $3,000 off of my work history. Now, in my example, if my check is $2,000, my wife's is $1,800, she would obviously just take the $1,800 because that's more than half of my own. And Social Security will do the calculation. They ask you, are you married? Or if not, were you married for how long? So they'll let you know which benefit's higher. But the spousal benefit is still around. There's no talk of it going away, and it's very helpful if one spouse is lower earner. My wife's a physical therapist. If I decide to stay at home, I can use the spousal benefit off her if half of hers is more than all of my own. But the only way I get that half, the full 50%, is if I wait until my full retirement age. So my wife takes her check. I'm going to use the spousal benefit. If I actually want the 50%, I have to wait until my full retirement age. For me, that's 67. If I take it early, I'm locking in 35%, not 50. So I can take it early, but anytime you take a benefit early, it's going to be reduced. Social Security always does a reduction factor if you take any benefit early. So I know I've been talking a lot. Let me just pause for a minute. On the right-hand side of the screen, you should have an unmute button. If you have any questions, whether it's about spousal benefits or anything I've talked about up to this point, please feel free to jump in. All right. I will move on to survivor benefits. This is also another very important area, and also an area where you do have some additional options. So it's very confusing, but you actually have additional options as well. So at death, the surviving spouse will receive the greater of own benefit or deceased spouse's benefit, whichever is larger. So I shared the example that my wife's grandfather passed away. When he passed away, they looked at the two benefits. His was higher, so my wife's grandmother dropped her benefit, started taking his larger benefit. So let's say she was receiving $2,000, he was getting $2,400. He passed away, she dropped her $2,000 and stepped up to the $2,400. And that's what she gets for the rest of her life. Now, in that example, it was very simple. It was later in life, no benefits were growing anymore, so they basically just said, okay, you get the larger of the two benefits. Now, where Adam and Christina and Heidi will come into play is for younger couples. Because you can actually start a survivor benefit as early as age 60. So I pass away, my wife can start taking a survivor benefit at the age of 60. Now, this is one time where you can still pick and choose which benefit to take. So in that example, my wife can take the survivor benefit, and if she has her own benefit, let that thing grow all the way until age 70 and then switch over. So this is where all the planning comes into place. We have to look at the two benefits, decide, okay, do we take the higher one now, or do we take the lower one and let the higher one get even higher? For example, 3 months ago, it was a client out of Rochester, New York. She was 63. They told her the survivor benefit was $2,100. Her benefit was only $1,800. So if I said, hey, do you want $2,100 or $1,800? Of course you're gonna pick the 21. But she was only 63. So that $2,100 could have gotten larger because she's not at her full retirement age. So I said to her, if you can live on the $1,800 now, let's let that $2,100 continue to grow and then switch over later. And you know what she said to me? She goes, I don't think you can do that. They didn't give me that option. And I said, no, you can definitely do that. You just have to ask Social Security. So she called me back 2 days later and said, you know what? I can do that. They actually estimated that the $2,100 would grow to $2,400. So she stayed on the $1,800, and then at a later point, she's going to flip over to the higher amount. So very important. Obviously, when you lose a spouse, the worst time of your life, and I would say most people just choose the higher benefit. They see $2 amounts. Why wouldn't you want the higher dollar amount? If your health is in good condition, you might want to take the lower check and let the larger check continue to increase and then switch over. So that's why I say with death, it becomes a little bit more confusing, but there's also more options. So you want to do the proper planning because you don't get to hit the redo button. After a certain amount of time, there's no more redo. So you're stuck with that decision. Now you can get a survivor benefit at the age of 60, 50 if you're disabled, or any age if you have young children. So back to my example. I passed away. We have 2 children under the age of 16. My wife could actually start getting a survivor benefit. And on the far right, so could my children. My daughters would get this benefit until 18 or 19 if they're still in high school. It used to be if you were in any schooling, college, grad school, you would still get that. They changed it a number of years ago. So now you have to be in high school as a child to get that benefit. So just know with survivor benefits, there's more options and you can actually take it before the age of 62. All right, divorce. I would say this is also a very popular topic because it's never been in the statement. Social Security doesn't talk about divorce a lot. They don't advertise it. I did this presentation out in Buffalo. It had to be about a year and a half ago now. I had 14 people in the crowd, 7 married couples. So I said, you know what, in lieu of time, why don't we skip divorce benefits? One lady said, well, my sister's divorced. Do you mind just running through it? I somehow spent more time with 7 married couples talking about divorce than the entire presentation combined. I feel like I'm increasing the divorce rate in upstate New York. And again, it's never been in the statement, so they don't talk a lot about this. But if you were married at least 10 years, no exceptions, 10 years, currently unmarried, divorced at least 2 years, you might still be able to collect off an ex-spouse. And I just talked about spousal benefits, up to 50% of your spouses. It's the exact same thing if you qualify for this divorce benefit. So if I divorce my wife, she could still be eligible as long as we're married 10 years, she's unmarried and divorced at least 2 years. So I divorced, and I should be quiet because my wife is downstairs. I'm talking about getting divorced, remarried, dying in car accidents. But even if I got remarried in this example, let's say I divorced my wife and I get remarried, it still wouldn't disqualify my ex-wife as long as she stays married in this example. And I had one gentleman say, well, what can I do to stop my ex-wife from collecting off me? And I said, honestly, there's nothing. There's no divorce. They won't even look at a divorce decree. But I said, sir, it doesn't affect you anyways. It's not like they take the money from you. And he said, well, I'm remarried. I said, it doesn't affect your new wife either. In this example, your ex-wife could be getting 50, your new wife's getting 50, and you're still getting your full benefit. He looks at me again and said, Matt, there's got to be something I can do. And obviously I realized that there's a lot going on here. So I said, let's just move on. But just think about it. There's nothing you can do. I said, unless you find her a new wife. If she gets remarried, she can't collect off you. And his response was, I wouldn't do that to my worst enemy. And I said, okay, let's just move on here. Let's just move on. But just know, if you were married 10 years, unmarried, and divorced for at least 2, you could collect off an ex-spouse if 50% of theirs is more than all of yours. Now, you can't pick and choose. You can't say, okay, can I get that divorced spouse now and then switch later? The only people that can still switch are either people that are survivors, death benefits, or if you were born before 1954, there's something still called a restricted application. So if you're born before 1954 and haven't collected Social Security, reach out to Adam or Christina or Heidi because there's one other option that could be available. It's called a restricted application. All right, we're running up on time here, so I do want to get to taxation and the workers' penalty before I wrap up.
Take what time you need, Matt. It's fine.
Okay. I'll keep going unless somebody asks me to stop talking, and that's happened before, so please feel free to. All right, so do-over. People always ask me, what happens if I decide to collect Social Security and I get a great job offer a year or 2 later? Can I stop my Social Security benefit? The answer is no. You now only have 1 year to hit the redo button. So if I start collecting at the age of 63, I can use this form. It's called an NSSA 521 form. If I fill this out and give back all the money I received within 12 months, it's the redo button. It's like it never happened. Beyond 12 months, you're stuck with that decision and you have to keep getting the benefits. If you have the workers' penalty, they're just going to apply the workers' penalty and move on from there. But you do have 12 months. So if you decide to retire, collect benefits, and you get this great job offer 6 months later, and you wish you didn't start this benefit, you can repay it. So just know NSSA 521. Oh, and there's one other thing I did want to point out, now that I know I do have a few extra minutes. With the survivor benefit, and I won't go back to the slide, but with divorce survivor benefits, I've actually run this to a few times, and I've realized now there's probably a lot of money on the table that people are leaving out there. If you've been divorced and you were married at least 10 years and you don't remarry, you might still be able to step up to survivor benefits if your ex-spouse passes away. So let's just use the example. I divorced my wife again. Let's say my wife's benefit is $1,800, my benefit is $2,000. So she's taking her own benefit, I'm taking my own benefit, because all of hers is more than half mine, so it doesn't help her, so she's getting her own benefit. Even though we're divorced, say I pass away, my wife, my ex-wife, can technically step up to my $2,000 if she knew to ask Social Security for that. Now, I've helped a lot of ex-wives and ex-husbands take advantage of a survivor benefit that they didn't even know was out there. And their question is, why didn't Social Security call me or send me an email or something, tell me that there's more money? And Social Security you'll never get a letter from Social Security and say, guess what? We got extra money for you. Just ask me for it. I want to give it to you. They don't do that. But I was working with a lady. She was 72. It turned out that she was married for about 20 years, divorced. Her ex-husband passed away. She didn't know about his income. She ended up requesting a survivor benefit. Her check went up $600 a month. Unfortunately, he passed away many years before that. They didn't do a look back. They're only allowed to go back 6 months. She missed about 5.5 years of a higher payment because she didn't even know to ask for that divorce survivor benefit. So if you have any friends or neighbors that are divorced, even if their ex is still alive, you might just want to mention, hey, if God forbid something happens to that ex, your benefit could still go up, but you have to request it. You'll never get a letter in the mail. All right, taxation. I'm definitely not a tax professional. I'd say this is probably the weakest part of my presentation, but I would talk to a tax professional or CPA because it's no longer tax-free. As I mentioned, up until 1983, I don't care if your income was $1 million, $100,000, there was no such thing as a tax on your Social Security check on the way out. 1983, they needed more money. They had to fix the system. They started taxing it on the way out. So now it's still tax-free if you file jointly and it's under $32,000, it's still tax-free, single 25. Now, it's not just earned income though, that's the problem. It's your adjusted gross income. It's non-taxable interest. It's half of your Social Security payment. So if I'm getting a $30,000 annual Social Security check, I'm already at $15,000 before I look at my pension, my 401k, maybe some non-taxable interest. So that's why they estimate that 63% of people this year that are collecting a Social Security check have to pay some sort of tax on it. 63%. When they started taxing people in 1983, it was 4% pay taxes on it. The problem is that they have not increased these dollar amounts that you're looking at 1 penny since they introduced them. So that 4% is now 63%. So just know that if you have outside investments, if maybe you're working part-time or collecting a pension, along with your Social Security check, you're probably gonna have to pay some taxes on this. If your income is high enough, up to 85% of your check could be subject to taxation at whatever bracket you're currently in. Hopefully when you retire, it's a lower tax bracket. But let's just say I'm in the easy numbers, 25th percent tax bracket. 85% of my check would be taxed at the 25th percent tax bracket if I was a high earner. So just know it's no longer tax-free. All right, the final one, and again, I started by saying this is where we do see the most mistakes, is clients that collect a check early and still have earned income. Now, this isn't like taxes where they look at everything. For the workers' penalty, they only look at earned income. So let me show you the easy one. If you're full retirement age, my grandfather went back to work at the age of 67. Now, he had some bad real estate. Unfortunately, he had to go back to work, but he was collecting Social Security. He actually started at 62. He could make as much as he wanted because he was 67 when he went back to work. So he got his full Social Security check, no penalty because it goes away at your full retirement age. And actually, believe it or not, my grandfather's check actually went up. His Social Security check went up because what he was doing, he was working full-time. He was driving a van for a school system that was special needs students full-time, making a good salary. And he noticed his check was going up, even though he's collecting Social Security. And he was starting to wonder, hey, what's going on here? And my grandfather's old school Italian, so he doesn't trust the government. So he's like, I'm not even going to question this. It's finally in my favor. I'm not going to call Social Security and see why my check went up. What they were doing was looking at his 35 years. They were looking at that new year, and they actually dropped off his lowest year, increased the new year. So if you decide to go back to work into retirement, and that's one of your best 35 years, that could actually help you. My grandfather thought Social Security was the best system. He thought this was better than sliced bread. He's like, I'm working full time, I'm getting my Social Security check, and it's going up. For 4 years, his check went up. Now year 5, he noticed his check didn't go up. He's still working full time. What happened was they already had his best 35 years, so this year didn't help him. So again, if it's one of your best 35 years, it could help you. If it's not, you're still going to get FICA taxes taken out. So now all of a sudden, remember, my grandfather thought this was the best system ever. He wasn't getting an increase and still paying taxes. He's like, this is the worst system the government's ever created. They're still taking my money. I'm not getting an increase. So hopefully if you go back to work, it's because you want to and not need to. But this is the problem, taking it early. If you're below full retirement age, the most you can make this year is $18,240 before the penalty turns on. So let's say I'm 62, collect Social Security. I'm working part-time at a golf course making $15,000. I'm perfectly fine. The penalty does not turn on until I go over that $18,240. But just for quick math, let's say I make $28,240 of earned income. I'm $10,000 over the threshold. You'll see they reduce it $1 for every $2. It's 50%. If I'm at $28,240, I'm $10,000 over. They're going to withhold $5,000. So half of the amount over that threshold is what they'll withhold. And if I don't tell them, I'm still going to get my checks until tax season. And then when they actually see my taxes and realize how much I made, that's when they send you a letter and say either give us the money back or you're not going to get a check until we recoup our money. And our calculation shows that's not going to be until January of next year or whatever the month is. Now, for the workers' penalty, I want to stress again, it's only earned income. If you're taking a pension or IRA or 401k, that doesn't count. I had a gentleman who was very upset because he thought his $40,000 a year pension would count against him. It doesn't. That's not considered earned income. Even if you own a place, let's say you own a place up at Lake Placid, that's passive income. It's not earned income. So again, that wouldn't count against you. It's really going to be W-2, 1099 type of income. But again, this is where we see a lot of mistakes is the workers' penalty. So I know I hit a lot over the last 35, 40 minutes. My goal was not to make anyone a Social Security expert, but hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully we all learned something new about Social Security that maybe we didn't know. So at this point, I think we're going to open it up to questions or comments. Hopefully this was helpful. But as a follow-up, if you have any questions or you want to set up a one-on-one time to discuss this, please reach out to Adam, Christina, Heidi, and we can definitely set something up and go through your individualized situation.
Thanks a lot, Matt. That was really, really informative. I know there was, like you said, there was a ton of information there.
Hopefully it wasn't too much.
Does anyone have any questions that you want to ask Matt, or maybe, you know, things that he went over that you might want to take another look at?
I have quite a few, guys, so I don't want to monopolize Matt. Please ask your questions. All right, I'll get the ball rolling then.
All right.
So, let's see. I wrote them in order as you were going down through there. Wow. So the first thing that you showed us was the website, Matt, which was really useful. And actually, I've had some questions before about the safety of the website and having to put in your Social Security number, the whole Social Security number.
Mm-hmm.
Any feedback on that, or do you know, what does Social Security do in order? Why do they ask for the full Social Security number, first of all?
Because they actually need to look up, they actually need to pull your past numbers to do that calculation. So the only way they can do that is if they have your Social Security number, because there could be two Matt Spearazzos that were born back in 1983 on October 7th. So the only way to narrow it down to your exact information. But I will say, anyone that ever signs up, please type in ssa.gov. I've actually received emails myself. Please sign up at ssa.com to see your increase in Social Security. They're phishing for you. It's a fake website, and they're phishing for you just to go to their website to put in that information. So the best advice I can ever give you is always type in ssa.gov. Don't respond to an email. Don't click on an email link. Always go to the website.
You know, that's
And
a
actually,
good point.
Christina, I'll point out one more thing. If you're getting close to full retirement age or even the age of 62, I would actually recommend everyone create an online account, because that's actually going to safeguard you away from cybersecurity. There's been some cases, and you can just Google them right after this. A gentleman out in New York City didn't sign up for Social Security, but had his information hacked. Never went to the website, never signed up because he was going to wait. Well, someone had his Social Security number. They actually signed him up for benefits, put in the bank account for direct deposit. They were getting those benefits for 9 months before they realized that it wasn't actually him. The only reason they realized is when he filed his taxes, his tax preparer said, okay, you got this Social Security income. He said, I haven't turned on Social Security yet. A hacker that had his information, because now you get all your Social Security checks direct deposited. So if you actually create an account, no one can ever create a duplicate account. So even if you don't want to sign up, I would still say create that online account.
I like that.
Good question.
John, do you have a question?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
Great presentation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
It really was. Something that you
I
mentioned.
may,
Oh,
Christina,
yeah.
on this creating an account, if you have an account for Medicare, does that count as your Social Security account, or do you need a separate one?
If you set it up when did you set up when you were 65 to sign up for Medicare?
Yes,
You're all set then. You already have an account created.
even though I don't collect Social Security yet.
If you had to sign up for Medicare, you did it through the Social Security office, so you must have
Okay,
created an account.
thank you.
Yeah. And that's a great question, because also, if you set up an account a few years ago and you forget the information, this isn't like a credit card company where you can just call and get it reset. They might actually request you to come into an office to prove you are who you are. So just know if you can't remember your account, it might be a little bit harder than just a credit card or a change password type of thing. Christina, any more questions that you have?
Oh, yeah. Don't worry.
I love this stuff, so I can talk about it all night.
So one of the things that you mentioned that I didn't realize before is that the taxes on Social Security, they go right back into the Social Security fund?
Oh, no. So the taxes that they take out, you mean?
No, not the taxes that they take out. So what was I thinking? The payroll tax. So you have to pay, the 6.2% or the 12.
Yes.
So that goes right back. That goes right into the Social Security fund. And
yes, it goes right into the.
And then what about if, say you have that, if I make over a certain amount and I have to pay, just like we're looking at here. So how much of Social Security is taxable? Does that amount that's taxable go back? No, it does not.
Good, great question. So a lot of people think, well, how come the system's still in trouble if they're taxing us on the way out? Not all of this right here goes back into the Social Security system.
Okay.
Great question. It goes back into the federal budget, and then we all know they choose what they want with that money.
Okay, so only the payroll tax rate goes back into the Social Security fund.
Correct.
All right.
Absolutely correct.
Okay.
As a follow-up to that, so the current income standard, the maximum is like 137,000 or something?
Yeah, I think it's 137.7, I think. Yep.
So if you earn 250,000, does that count for your 35 years of highest income, or do they cap it at 137?
That is a great question. Great question. I'm not sure who asked that, but
Sure.
You're right. They cap it. So if I make 260 this year on my Social Security statement, it's only going to show 137.7. So that's a great point. If I make 1.2 million this year, I'm only get that 137 on my statement. That's the credit I get. Good question.
Any other follow-up, George? No. Going back to the online website, if I'm correct,
Yes.
you cannot look at spousal options on there, right? So it's
You
just,
can, no.
okay. That makes it more
And
difficult. That's why people call us.
and you technically can't even look at survivor benefits unless you have the spouse's benefit in front of you as well. So the only one you can look online is really your own benefit or your own survivor benefit, not that you would get off the spouse. So it's still limited information that you can get on the website.
All right. My next couple of questions are about survivor benefits.
Try to go back.
So do you receive, or is there a penalty for receiving survivor benefits early on? So say you did pass away and your wife started collecting survivor benefits now.
Mhm.
I'm assuming that those only last for a certain amount of time before, until your kids are 16 or 18, right? Or 16.
Yep.
Then does that affect her benefit later on that she's eligible for?
So let's just say she's getting $1,800 right now because our kids are under the age of 16.
Mm-hmm.
And then my wife gets shut off, and then she'll be re-eligible at the age of 60, right? The question is, will the dollar amount go up at that point, or is it locked in at that amount?
Or
Right.
will it go down? Will they penalize her for taking it early on?
It won't go down, but it won't go up either. So you kind of lock that amount in. You've locked in that survivor benefit, but they're not going to give you a huge discount because you took it that early. So it won't be the full survivor benefit because remember, my wife's not full retirement age. So it's going to be discounted, but it will be the same amount when she reapplies at 60 if that helps her.
Okay. So
But remember, she still has her own benefit. Correct. She doesn't have to take it, no. And if she's working, for example, in my example, my wife still works, and she's going to be over that 18 too. So she probably wouldn't even take it. So you don't have to take it. And in a lot of cases, with younger couples, they don't take it because they're going to make more than that $18,240 because that worker penalty still applies to survivor benefits.
So I guess then it would lead into the benefit for the children. Is there any reason why they would not take a benefit?
No. Social Security, they have their own faults. One thing I'd say is they do take care of children. So no, those children should, even if the mother doesn't take it, the children should still take it. Because the children probably don't have any income or very low, so they're going to get their benefit. So great question, but the children should always take the benefit.
Okay. And so you said something that I wasn't quite aware of. I knew that you could switch from a survivor benefit to an individual benefit. So somebody could take, benefits starting at 60 and then switch to their own at 67. I didn't realize you can switch from a individual benefit to a survivor benefit. And
Yeah.
So that is correct.
Yeah, you're right. So let's say I'm 62. Let's say the survivor benefits can be higher at 66. Because remember, if I'm 62, I don't get the full survivor. So what I might do is take my own benefit at 62, let the survivor get even larger, and then switch over a survivor when it is full at 66 for me or 67. So yeah, you can either take your own, let the survivor grow, or take survivor, let your own grow. Now, majority of people usually let their own grow because that grows till 70. But yeah, if there's a big income difference, if the survivor is that much higher and you're not full retirement age, you might say, okay, I'll take my smaller one at 62 and then switch over to survivor, which would be larger at full retirement age.
Okay.
A lot of moving parts with survivor.
I guess so. And that one more question on that. So you were talking about, say my husband and I are married longer than 10 years, we get divorced, he passes away. Oh, let's say he remarries and then passes away. You said I can collect as a survivor. Can his wife that he was married to when he passed also collect as a survivor, or is only one?
No, I love this. But in this example, they could both. So I divorce my wife, I get remarried. I pass away, they could both step up to full survivor benefits if it helps them. Yeah.
Okay.
Great question. I never really thought of it like that, but in that situation, they'd both be eligible, yeah. And then we wonder why the system's going so broke right now. It was never designed for this, but that's what we're doing. That's why we do these. There's money out there. You might as well take advantage of it. And you know how many divorced men and women are probably out there that have extra money? They just don't know about this. They don't know to ask.
Yep, I agree. Well, I've monopolized your time. Anybody else have any questions? We look good.
Yeah. Well, I'll take off the recording button real quick. All right. So yeah, well, if there's no more questions, then, I just really want to thank Matt for his time tonight. That was a very informative presentation, and thank you for answering all our questions. I know there's a ton of, little intricacies there with Social Security, but that was a ton of information that's very, very useful to everyone, I think.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I know it's not the most exciting conversation, but it's beneficial. It affects 91% of all Americans. So again, if I can help in any way with follow-up, or if something didn't make sense, please use us as a resource. That's our job. But thank you all. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, for Christina, for having me. And if there's no other questions, hopefully everyone stays safe and healthy.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Great to see everybody or hear everybody.